Daddy Mac. Dan's 30 years got our way, trading life and markets every day. Rusty's chained to the mines, digging deep day by day. But when Option Omega releases new features, he's free to come out and play. Option Omega, you're trading home, where every move makes you feel less alone.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning, Troy.
Dan, you doing okay this weekend? How was your weekend?
Yeah, doing okay. And it's nice. Knoxville is actually, I saw it in the lower 80s, which is like kind of cool here in the
winter time.
Winter time.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I was telling Dan right before Friday during the show, I had a little bit of a churning in the stomach, and went home right after the show and had a little stomach bug, and it knocked me out. And I slept a lot, but it's summer sleep, Dan, to me. When you don't have this problem, praise be to God, but when you're big and fat, Dan, sleeping during the summer sometimes it just it's hard,
It is. That's why, I was texting Troy. I was just suggesting, because we were talking a little bit last week, you got the 50th. Not that you feel like when you have a stomach bug, that's different. You don't necessarily feel like watching something, but I had suggested being the 50th anniversary of Jaws or Rambo. Sometimes those are the classic movies that could get you, help a little bit.
Dan was very sweet to text during the weekend and say, "How you feeling?" To which my response verbally was just,
Yeah.
That was my feeling, but he was very kind to reach out.
Well,
My son, these summer months, my son is not much of a TV watcher. And the other day I made possibly the greatest decision as a father I've ever made, where I stumbled upon Amazon Prime that we have free access to Chips, the 1970s motorcycle show.
Too funny.
And he took to it in a way that I've never seen him take to a show.
Wow.
And it's the most boring show I've ever seen in my life.
Easily. But if you like motorcycles.
If you like motorcycles.
If you like things with engines, which
so
Nolan does. Yeah.
I told my wife this morning, I said, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to take it to the next level. And so right before I left this morning, I purchased the first episode of the A-Team. And we're taking it to a different level because he loves Mr. T. He loves Rocky 3. And so I was explaining the A-Team, and he said, the A-Team's this team of people who solve problems for money. And they each have a set of skills. So we're going through it, and we got to Mr. T, and he said, "What's Mr. T's skill?" I said, beating people up. He's a good guy, but he just beats people up.
That's cutting right through it.
That's what Mr. T does. So
pain. Yeah.
Yeah, pain. That's right. Lord willing, he is watching the A-Team as we speak. Mr. Flawless, great suggestion as well. That's next is Knight Rider. It's the inevitable next step is Knight Rider. So I'm trying to raise my son as if it's 1984.
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? I'm going to buy him some Reagan 84 t-shirts.
Yeah.
Just, it's a new day in America. He does like Bruce Springsteen. He is a weird, he's got a particular set of likes that he likes.
Troy, I'm thinking like even older than Chips. I mean, Chips was kind of like a heartthrob type
Oh yeah,
movie.
Poncho.
I think of like, do you ever see? I mean, this is an old one. Was it Peter Fonda, Born to Be Wild, or what was that?
Easy Rider.
Easy Rider. That was the song. Or
Yeah,
Easy Rider. I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
He that I don't know if we're there yet, but eventually, no doubt he will. I mean, he does like he does like Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood.
How would you not? I mean,
Right. And that's maybe his favorite movie. So much so that there's a little talk. Dan and I will cement it here pretty soon and announce it. But if you live in California, there's a chance in August you might be able to see Dan and I do a talk together. We'll put out more information. Also, there's a chance you might get to meet my son Nolan, because
which is even cooler.
oh yeah, much cooler than us. Once we found out that we might be going anywhere close to Alcatraz, we started the talk. So
Yeah, that and it's still going. Yeah, it's.
yeah.
I mean, I would go to. We're talking about a going out to a seminar near the San Francisco area, and I don't know, over the years I might have been there 8 times or 9. Every time I would bring one of the boys or whatever. Alcatraz was the highlight. Always. I never get, it's, just, you can see Al Capone's.
I mean, Al Capone was there.
Yeah. I mean, what more do you, yeah.
What are we going to do?
I mean, you get a boat ride and then everybody on the ferry boat. Do you think they really made it with the shark infested waters off? You love a little bit of conspiracy theory, a little bit of,
Well, Dan, I mean, here's the thing. I don't want to give it away, but do you think they made it?
I'd like to say I'm an optimist. I'd like to say yes. One of them at least made it. You hope, because it's like a Rocky movie. It's the underdog. You want to see these guys were in and they did a lot of work to do it. You want to see one of them beat the system. It's like at the end of, what is it, Shawshank Redemption? Is that the movie? At the end, when he made it out, you felt so good that he made it out. I mean, it was like, yes.
And I love the fact that in movies, the one that escapes is always the one that was probably wrongly accused.
Yes. Oh,
That helps.
Which is, well, it does. Yeah. You don't want a guy who confessed to 9 murders and he was guilty.
Yeah.
He's harder to root for.
It's a little harder to root for. But I will say, I mean, there is a little part of me, and it's a dark part. Anytime there's a prison escape, and like 3 days later they catch them, there is a little part of me that's like, oh, it is
you're admiring the skill set, right? If a guy is
100%.
If a guy, I mean, and there's this romanticism, like, okay, the guy escapes, he's in the mountains, and they got 1,000 guys trying to catch him in the mountains, and this guy survived. This guy makes it. It makes you, it's Rambo. It is. But anyways,
as you can tell, I am talking a lot because, as I said, I was sick all weekend, and I'm gonna be real honest with you. I got a test. It's a terrible test.
Yeah.
To show you. But what we talked about we were going to do this week was looking at credit selling stuff that you could put on that's not 0 day. So in the small account challenge, we're thinking about, pattern day traders are a real thing that people have to deal with.
Yeah.
And so we've been looking at it, and Dan, it's tough selling. It's tough selling sometimes for a small account, especially, to sell premium.
It is, unless it's tough. If you're on the right side, I mean, even if, when you look at let's just take the last week, for example, VIX has gone from, I know last week might be a little bit sore spot for people who do double calendars, right? To a degree. Now, some of it's timing, right? That's why I think diversification of when you put on trades is real important. But overall, when you have volatility crushing and you have a big enough move, right? So that, even with a whatever, 15, 20 delta double calendar, with the move of last week, which from the opening Monday to the close on Friday, 150 to 200 points, it can overshoot, right? That double calendar, even that can overshoot, right? And so, but when you think about something as simple as, what did well last week? Well, if you were selling put credit spreads or selling puts or whatever, even if the vol went down because you had the right direction, yes. Can you sell? Can you sell? Here's the myth buster. Can you sell credit in a low vol environment do well? Absolutely. As long as the market, well, if the market goes your direction, but you can, iron condors, over the years, if you said, did you see more success at low vol iron condor? Well, again, let me preface it. Over the years was before you had 0 day. So, 15 years ago or 10 years ago, you didn't have 0 day. But with 0 day, even last week, which was a credit spread, that would have been more challenging if you look at where the market moved. But, it's also when you did it during the day. Wouldn't you say, a couple of days we gapped up and then it was fine for a couple hours. So if somebody was doing multiple iron condors, well, you could say some were good, some weren't. We have some folk that will do like a 30 wide, 30 delta iron condor in the morning, more kind of a tasty trade version. And, you might put it on at, I think this one is put on a half hour into the opening. You're only going to hold it an hour and a half and you try to make 25%. That generally even did pretty good last week. Now, sometimes some people are a little more subjective to it, but I think if you're doing, I would just by looking at the vol and SPX, people looking at last week, some tranches in a multiple entry iron condor did okay. Some didn't do okay. Some double long diagonals, which would be like Tom mentioned, they're the double, in the world of doubles, right? Double diagonal, double calendar, double long diagonal. On those three that are straight long vega, those three, the double long diagonal, like Tom mentioned, has the lowest negative gamma, which means you can handle a move better. You have more volatility risk. But if it goes up more, that seems to handle it. But last week was more challenging just because you had that extended move. But it just brings one thing, Troy. I was thinking about this. I think it's helpful to look at, do an autopsy and look at it, because sometimes you can make the wrong conclusions. I think people are unreasonable, even in retail traders. You've had 5 good weeks generally of range bound trading overall, almost anything you did before the last week. And then you had this up week. But people are like, instead of just saying, look, here's what happened. And I think that's the good thing, is doing a proper post-mortem where you can see what did go wrong. Like the worst thing I see is when people will say, well, I'm not going to do this anymore, or I'm going to switch, or I'm going to abandon ship, or I'm going to stop doing this trade. I'm like, off one stinking week? Are you kidding me? But people are like that, right? And that's where I think it's good as a community to, it's like, wait a second. You don't abandon something because, especially last week, it wasn't, we moved much more than the expected move. So to make a decision based on last week, I think is insane. That I'm going to switch I'm going to switch something. I mean, you could back test it, but how many weeks like that do you get where we're moving? I don't know if it was ultimately from Monday's opening, 2.5 standard deviation move. You're not gonna get that, but we react, right? That stinks. I lost this, and that's it. I'm only going to do credit spreads now. No, I'm going to do put credit spreads. Good. Perfect timing to do put credit spreads. Good luck to you, right? We're up 1 billion points. We're up more. This is exactly the time to start put credit spreads, right?
Genius.
Genius. Let's do it.
I agree completely. And I mean, even some of the, so I have some dear friend who started trading some small account stuff, and it's funny. It's so funny to me how when a lot of this really is so random about how when you decide to start trading. So I've been trading some different small account stuff. Maybe I haven't shown you guys yet. Maybe a dear friend of mine, I was showing him some secret sauce stuff, and they were, I mean, absolutely crushing this portfolio of trades, which is absolutely crushing the last 30 days. Last week had maybe lost a tenth of everything had won the last 30 days. So in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. It's a non-starter. But the problem is he started trading it the week it started losing. And he's staying the distance, he's learning, and he's like, I'm staying put. But there is this thing of like, so are we going to do these trades again? There's a weird thing in a human psyche that's like, hey, I just got punched in the face. Boxing's I mean, Mike Tyson, the quote's a classic quote. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Did that come from him? Did that come from?
I think that's Tyson. Yeah,
that is one of the best boxing quotes of all time.
Oh, it is, but that's so true with life. Is you could have this plan, and again, we say we're going to say this almost every time, especially with credit spreads. We're going to say this like, okay, the plan is you win 70% of the time. You could have probably 3 losers in a row looking at the data. We say, awesome. Okay, cool. But I'm still going to be a millionaire like in a year and a half if I run this.
Yeah.
And I'll run it because I'm a brave boy. And you lose that second time in a row and you say, well, bud, I don't want to get punched in the face anymore.
Yeah.
And you're like, but that's part of the, you have to, that's why I decided not to be a professional boxer, Dan. I
was going to ask you the other day.
And I know.
I thought you tell. I go, this guy should be a professional boxer.
He has all the skills.
I'm glad you publicly am announcing
why. It's time to address this. And what it is.
With the cigar, I love it. Here's why I didn't become a professional boxer. Yeah.
What it is my friends and I, we grew up boxing. We had all the gear and stuff like that. And we'd go to the park right down the street here and we'd box.
Wow.
And my buddy was a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little bit faster than me. But we'd box and I would get so rhythmic. I'd say, okay, jab, jab, that, jab, jab, that. And I did that a couple times and landed some really good blows with him. And then I woke up 10 minutes later on the ground.
Are you serious? Did you really? He knocked you out? Wow.
Just knocked me out.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
This is a mistake.
Yeah, it's a little higher risk than you want. It's a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with credit selling, especially any trading, but I've noticed with credit selling, because by its very nature, you are risking more than you can win. Usually in a credit selling situation, once you lose 1 or 2, it really hurts, it really is painful.
It is. And but again, it's like, I don't want to bring up a great, in the risk management world, but you think of Cool Hand Luke when the warden is basically, Luke, when are you going to just get it and stop this stuff? Or, get your mind right. And Luke, the rebellious, he didn't. But I think in the world of iron condors, I mean, the nice thing is, again, whether you're doing 0-day, 4-day, 15-day, 30-day iron condors, first of all, you have 2 paths to choose, and which is nice, right? You can do something in the 10 delta category where you have a high probability stinky risk reward, right? Or you have okay, instead of selling a 10 delta, I'm going to sell a 30 delta, right? Which would be more like tasty. I mean, the way Tom has looked at it, which is for 0 day, it might attract some people because it's, hey, even if I don't know what I'm doing, the risk reward is about 1-to-1, right? I don't have the probabilities, but I think you have two camps. But once whatever camp you pick, right? A little bit higher delta or a little bit lower delta, whether you do it once a day, like in a 0 day or whatever, or you do it multiple times a day, or whether you do what durations you do, it really comes down to, especially on the 10 delta, it's not rocket science, right? You have a stinky risk reward. How are you going to deal with it, right? It doesn't take, I don't think it takes more just you figuring out where you're comfortable with, right? If I'm going to do a 10 wide vertical and I'm going to bring in $1 and I have $900 of risk, you decide, right? I'm going to make $100. What's the most you're willing to lose on that, right? And I would say contend at the most it might be 2 times your credit, right? Because again, how much are you going to, if you say I'm going to leave it alone, okay, all you need is one where you lose 8 or 900, and your last trade you made 100. Now it's going to take 7 or 8 to get it back. That kind of demoralizes you, and it's tougher to come back from. But it is really that discipline of, 0 day, you're not going to do as many adjustments on versus, if you do a 30 day, you got a lot more time. You could do a little more jujitsu. But I think it really is wouldn't you say it's a disciplined game? When I look at someone like Tammy, who does the, very good at the 0 day.
Yeah.
When I've talked to her or seen what she's done, she's got what it takes in terms of she's disciplined, right? There's no messing around, and she's disciplined. She's organized.
Yeah.
And as Barney Fife would say, she nip it in the bud, and she's gonna, whatever. And I don't know if she does it 1.5, 2 times the lot, but that's really all it is. And if you're disciplined, you'll win over time, right?
That's right. And shout out Tammy Chambliss, because I've said this for years about her. One of the things, and you can look up Tammy Chambliss. She's very famous in the options community. And you can see her YouTube videos. Very kind-hearted person,
Very
too.
nice
Very kind-hearted. The thing I love about Tammy's trading style is she has the right blend in my mind, that she trusts the data. She is methodical. And she wins. Like, she has a good track record, which ultimately that's what counts with this stuff, but she also has this intangible thing that she has that other people don't have, where she trusts the data, but then I've been on with her where she's like, I'm not trading today. And be like, why? And be like, I don't like Thursday. I'm just not trading Thursdays. And be like, well, your data shows that you could still trade, you could still win. She's like, yeah, I just don't want to do it. And I think there's a mix of that sometimes and stuff to say, and Dan, you certainly have that. I mean, we've talked through trades before where you're like, I'm just not going to do that today. And we could say like, well, the data says it. And we're like, yeah, but I've also been trading for a long time. I know.
Well, but I think what you say, Troy, like 2 things in there. Number one, and I say this respectfully, if someone
with all due respect,
if someone said to me, Dan, I want you to test a 0 day or a 10-day iron condor, right? A 10 delta iron condor, whether it be for a 0 day or 20 day. Part of me could say, right, I don't need to test it, right? I mean, look at the deltas. Over time, it's going to have a pretty good result. Agree? Over time, right? I'm not talking about making probability wise. I'm not talking about if you leave it alone, bad things can happen. But I think but you want to test it because you want to see where it is. Now I forget my, see, when you get older, you forget what you were going to say.
I get
Let me
that.
see if I can remember the 10 delta. Here's the thing. That's why it's so important to stick with a strategy, because if you're doing 10 delta, all right, you already got it. It all comes down to the discipline. But the second thing comes down to, and that's where, to me, it's not surprising, I'm sure in your community too, if you said, who are the best double calendar traders? Now, obviously, some people are better at it than others with experience. But part of it does come to, if you said, well, who's done the most double calendars, right? Who's done the most, made the most fettuccine Alfredo? People who have done 500 double calendars, if you're paying attention to it, you're going to get much better at it. Wouldn't you agree? So I think, and then the next thought is, once you do it, it's like you, Troy, I'll use you as an example, if I may. When you're talking like the volatility stuff and the shots, you've done so many of these. I've seen you on time saying, not yet. Or because I think it's just, you do these things all the time, you're going to naturally get better, right? Isn't it somebody who's made fettuccine Alfredo 500 times versus 10? They just, you didn't put enough salt. I put in just as much salt as you told me. You didn't.
That's right. That's 100% right. And that's the mix of how this stuff works. Is we're not talking, when I say discretionary, I'm not talking about changing the plan, because that's the last thing you want to do. Is if you've tested and you have the strategy, you don't change the plan. But the way this stuff works is like, I have reached midlife crisis. I like Mustang convertibles. I like war films, like historical war films now.
Oh yeah.
And you'll see, Patton, classic film. These guys, you trust the plan, but when it's time to execute in any battle, there's always this element of where you're like, hold.
Yeah,
Hold.
right.
There's this little bit of discretion in executing the plan. So yeah, we trust the back test, but we also are generals. We're little generals in our little army. And so, listen, I've talked for a long time without showing a test. I think it's good to show a test. But before I show a test real quick, let me just do this. Let me put this here real quick. Shout out Tom and for this. Dan, this to me is the Christmas gift of the sea. I mean, this is
Tom.
this is
Tom is extremely. I didn't, until Tom had to educate me. I've heard of memes. I wasn't really up on them. I just thought, I thought Tom was just extraordinarily talented, which he is, at finding these things. But when he came up with that,
I love it. I would wear that.
I was belly laughing when I saw it.
And forget the t-shirt. I want the sweater.
I love those sweaters. I love those sweaters with the red and the little flower, whatever.
I love it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to show that real quick, but let me do this. Let me share something else here. Okay, so here's the test for today. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say this test is called what I want you to do with this test, which is don't do this. This is what this test is. And it is just an idea. Again, what I want to explore this week is the idea of selling longer dated stuff in a small account. And so there are tons of stuff wrong with this test. We're just getting started. But the idea, Dan, is to say anytime between 10:15 and 3:55, when we move down a minimum of 1/3%, a max of 0.4%. So when we have that type of move down, we're going to sell a 3 DTE put credit spread. And it's 35 delta, 10 wide, right? Initial thoughts with that idea. So you're selling into weakness.
Yeah, I don't think that's. I like the strategy. Couple reasons, but I also like it in, you could say it in this environment now, right? But I like the fact that it's only you need at least you need a 0.3% move in the SPX down, but you don't want the big kahuna, right? You don't want a 1% move down, right? Agree, Troy?
I was unmuted. Sorry. Yeah, I was muted. Yep. Absolutely.
But you don't want, you don't want the big move down. And I think in an uptrending market, because you're not getting you're kind of staying out of the big crazy days. But I also like the 35 delta. 35 delta can get you out quicker as it goes up a little bit than a 10 delta, because you're getting more credit, right? You're getting 10 wide. What does this get you near? Even in a lower volatility environment, well, maybe 20 and under, you're getting about $3, right? Well, you said, let's see, June 23rd, the credit was 270. June 20th, the credit was 265. So you're talking about, near $700 margin for one contract, right? And so I think you could get out quicker if you chose to on this than a 10 delta. But I like it. I like that. What was your thinking, Troy, with when you look at the entry? What was your thinking on I get it, and I think it's good. You put the minimum, that one entry criteria. You put what minimum third down, but no more than 40. What especially with the max 0.4%? What was going through your mind on that one? Which I think was good.
Mostly throwing up, mostly trying to do due diligence to get something done for the weekend.
I love
it. I like the idea. I mean, what you just said, I think, is the way I was looking at it. Is like you don't want to sell. On those. So the Liberation Day is a great data point for this. During the Liberation Day week, when we were opening down 5%, vol is so high at that point. This is like this trade I would not even consider during those times. Those type of situations in my mind is you could sell a 30-day put spread that's like 1,000 points away and get $3 on like a 10 wide.
Yeah.
Like that is, those are different things. In my mind, this is actually for this environment where you're like, it's a generally uptrending market, vols receding. So, and every dip is getting bought. And that's what you're really playing for so the next step in my mind is how do you add more filters to make sure that we're in that type of environment?
Well, Troy, this is an encouragement to, like you said at the beginning, people think, well, I can only sell credits. I need a 30 vol. I need a 25. Well, no. If you look at this test is probably most of the success to get a 75% win rate. Most of the success, I would bet most of these trades are well under 20 vol, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just basically looking at, and you're saying, I want to do this in an uptrend, but I want to do it in an uptrend, but I want to have some rails or parameters in there that I don't get caught up in the craziness of a 200-point move.
That's right.
After I got the sucker on, because then, as Mr. T would say, that's pain.
That's
right?
pain.
So I think you're basically saying, I do want a little bit of vol, but not too much. And I want an uptrending market. And, I think this is a good plan because, you think about it, is a 35 delta shouldn't be a 75% win rate, right?
Right.
Agree? And so you've got a good win rate.
That's right. And then it's just adjusting. And so Stephen, great point. I don't like that the average loser is 666, so we're going to want to change that.
Oh,
That's not
yeah,
something we're into. Um,
it's loser 6.
so, but listen, I shared the test. I'll keep working on it too. We'll make it. Stephen, you're on the right track. So you want to try. So this is the game with any option omega back test. You'll notice if you're in the community, people find a thing. They say, okay, this is like how the steps go. You find a thing that wins. Okay. And then you try to make it better. But there's a balancing act because you can make it so good on a back test that you've filtered out so many dates that you have less data. And the less data you have, the less trades you have, the less confidence that you're not being fooled by randomness there is. And so it's a balancing act of, like Steven's saying, try the above 5 SMA filter. That very well could be the case. And so we'll play around with it this week. We'll confirm it. But that as we go through this week, things to think through, and hopefully this helps your back testing, is you want to be really cognizant of not over filtering. You want to filter. We have the filters for a reason, but you want to, if you're bowling, you can put the rails on, you can put the guardrails on when you're bowling, and that's fun, but you're not going to win any championships with the guardrails. And so you have to build yourself the guardrails, and that's a terrible analogy. I don't know what's going with that, but anyway, I like the idea of guardrails.
Guardrails.
Yeah. So,
and one other thing, Troy, and when you're looking at you think about it, a put credit spread before people get excited, you're always going to have, if you wanted any test to make successful in a back test, get into the short puts business, right? Right. Whether you do a credit spread or a short put, you're going to have a high win rate because the market generally goes up over time. So the main thing isn't so much the volatility, which, yes, you look at, but it's not the number one. The number one is you've got to, especially if you're 35 delta, 20 delta, 10 delta, it's how do you deal with those few times where you can lose 2 to 3 times what you normally make, and it could happen multiple days in a row. So you're really, a lot of the rails or stuff, and that's what you were good. That was the attempt here, which I think was a good one, to limit, okay, I want to do it when it goes down, a little bit of volatility, but I'm not playing when it looks like dark clouds out there, right? And however people, that's really, I think, the emphasis in a put credit spread, because let's face it, talk to anybody who's done iron condors, 10 delta or less, anybody who sells puts for a living, anybody who does just put credit spreads, you're going to have a high win rate. Let's face it, most of the time, you're not going to do anything. But it comes down to, and you won't know right away, right? Those, if there's 100 people that do that, you won't know till you get, like, was it April, beginning of April or whatever, did they have a good plan? When there's only 3 of those 100 left, you'll know they had a good plan for destruction. And that's when you'll know. And the plan has to be focused around, it's very simple. If you do X amount of occurrences, you're winning $100 80 times. You can't be losing, 20x.
it's a math game.
There's got to be a little bit of sanity there. It's not.
That's right.
That's it. A little bit of sanity and very disciplined. So
that's right. Well, listen, I failed my dojo. I was sick this week, but we're going to be back stronger. We're going to make these tests better. And so we'll look at this week. We'll look at some longer dated stuff, see what we can add to the small account challenge. Be safe out there. It's a short week. Heads up, if you have DCs on, you can back test it, but giving you alpha, as the kids say, you might want to look at maybe not opening some of the same week DCs, or back test the idea of not opening DCs on a short week. Just an idea.
And Troy, we might, just a thought. VIX is up, market's up 16,
Yeah.
16 could be a holding pattern here.
Yeah.
I mean, 16 could be a low for a little bit of time here.
Yeah.
Market's up again and VIX is up. So I think we'll see
Yeah.
if we go under 16. But anyway,
Yeah. Not a tariff deal in sight.
that's right.
So anyway, you guys have a great trading day. We will be back tomorrow. Matt will be on tomorrow as well. So talk to you guys soon.